Whew, we're gonna check out this movie called Believer, and there's two movies, so we're gonna get to the first one. This one was fucking wild. So we start with this dude by the name of Detective Joe, right? Now he's talking to his supposed niece, or looks at like a niece, this chick by the name of Yuli. Now Yuli is a smart kid, but she's messed up. She be doing drugs or whatever like that. Now the reason he's talking to her is because he needs her to talk to somebody else to try to get to this dude by the name of Mr. Lee. She gotta get some drugs and get some information or whatever like that, right? Now, Detective Joe's been tracking down this dude, Mr. Lee, for like 2 years. So the meeting supposedly lasted a maximum of 2 hours, right? Joe sits in front of a TV or whatever like that, and all of a sudden he hears this information about CEO dude Lee just got, murdered or he died passed recently or something like that. He was sponsored by some type of corporate company or whatever like that. But then he notices that his clock is a little bit past 2 hours, and she ain't hit her back yet. So he's like, all right, you got to figure out where she's at. He finds Yuli by a car, you know what I'm saying? She's sitting by the car, bleeding all out with everything like that, with mouth taped up. They go to the hospital. Fortunately, she ain't make it. She was done deal dead as shit. So at this point, he doesn't really have another lead on Mr. Lee. Then all of a sudden, this lady is in there walking towards this 3-story house. Before she even gets there, bomb explodes, blowing the whole shit up. So the lady comes straight to the police. And she ends up talking straight to Detective Joe, you know what I'm saying? And this lady, she goes by the name of Yuzan. Yuzan was actually one of the advisors at the company that CEO Lee used to run. It turns out Mr. Lee actually killed CEO Lee. And up to this day, nobody's actually seen Mr. Lee's face. With the exception of the house that she was going to, because it was like 8 other people that were killed in that same spot. It turns out it was like some type of factory or something. Now, apparently she was supposed to get killed in the process because she was late to the meeting. She actually survived the shit. So the thing is, she starts getting a little bit of information, but the thing is, Joe is trying to figure out if he can trust her, you know what I'm saying, because she used to work right under Mr. Lee. Now, she says she needs a cigarette and a soup or whatever like that because she's got like diabetes and, stuff be acting up. And she says her driver has her medicine. So when they go check out the building, it turns out the only thing that survived was this dude by the name of Yak and his dog. Now, this dog got burns on it. It's pretty much fucked up to the point where it can't even bark, but they end up taking it to the veterinary hospital or whatnot. Then they pick it up Rack for questioning. While that's going on, Suhan is eating her soup, whatever like that. Then she just passes out, done deal, and find out she's dead as shit. We're like, what the fuck happened to Suhan? The thing was, the driver got her the pills or whatever like that. But the thing was, we didn't even know if she took her pills or not. Turns out, Yak is her driver. I mean, his name is Rack, my bad. The thing is, the cops didn't find that out till 15 minutes after he got to the police station. Now, while he's being questioned, he don't say shit the whole time until they start talking about the dog. They go to check on the dog, make sure it's okay and all that. Sue asks Rack, what's the dog's name? He calls him Jindu. The thing is, that's the type of dog he is, but he just calls him that. So we're like, okay, you just didn't give him a name. This is going to be important later on, trust me. So it turns out Rack starts talking to Joe, and Rack has got a lot of connections to the insides and stuff like that. But even he has never seen Mr. Lee before. So he's got this operation set up where he's supposed to be with this dude by the name of Mr. Park. And they got to meet this Cheeto nigga and his wife. The thing is, when they set up the deal, Mr. Lee is actually supposed to come in right after that. And that's when Joe will finally see who Mr. Lee really is. So this is crazy. The way they have this set up is like this. Boy, Joe was going to walk in with Rack pretending to be Mr. Park so he could meet up with Cheeto and the wife. And they're supposed to be shipping out this drug. It's called Leica. Now, Leica's supposed to be some high potency type of dope, sniffing shit through your nose and all that. And Cheeto makes this scene tense as shit. But bottom line is, he's willing to, get shit popping, you know what I'm saying? He sniffs the dope and all that, you know what I'm saying? Now they got a deal in place. The thing is, Mr. Lee never showed up. So Cheeto's gonna do things with his wife and leave the room. Now, here's the other part of this plan. The police and them got another room set up, right? Now, Joe is gonna pretend to be Cheeto, and Rack is gonna escort the real Mr. Park when he comes to meet up with Cheeto, but it's really Joe. So now Joe is actually meeting the real Mr. Park. Here's where the plan goes wrong. Now, Rack had already gave Mr. Park a sample of the Leica. The thing is, the Leica's supposed to be fake because Joe has to sniff it. But here's the thing. Mr. Park pulls out some other shit. It's like some blue crystal meth or whatever like that. So the thing is, he's got to sniff both of them shits to make it seem official so he can get the okay from Mr. Park and all that shit. If Joe don't do this, he could fuck the case up. So basically, he sniffs in both of them shits. And I'm like, nigga, this nigga like he's about to fucking convulse. But nevertheless, they get the deal done. Now, afterwards, Joe's convulsing. They gotta make sure they throw him in a tub full of ice, all type of shit. Now, he's ready to kill Rack at this point, but Rack is like, look, man, we got the shit done, you know what I'm saying? Now, Rack comes through with this truck, right? And he's got this shipment of the Leica or whatever like that. Now, they're in these like 9 different type of barrels or whatever. Now, he's got his crew that's gonna mix this shit up and get it popping, but it's 2 specific people, and both of them are deaf. They speak sign language. We're gonna call them the Lolo twins. Now, of course, Joe and the cops are all recording this shit to make sure everything's going down right. And the only person that can speak to them is Rack, obviously. They got everything popping with that, and after everything is chill, you know what I'm saying? The Lolo twins, they heard about Rack's mom passing away, because apparently his mom was in the same building. You know, with those explosion and all that. So now everything's good. They got it all in a briefcase, right? Now, all these barrels, you know what I'm saying, it contains into like 18 different like vial capsules or whatever like that. These 18 capsules are in a briefcase. You think to yourself, like, all that for this? He was like, this little bit is worth like 18 million right now. He's like, oh shit, okay, bet. $1 million a capsule. Now it's morning by this point. Now, right before they're about to get to, you know, a certain location or whatever like that, all of a sudden, Cheeto's wife comes out with her goons or whatever like that, and they kidnap Joe and Rack. So they take us to the spot. Guy was sitting on the couch. Now Cheeto is looking at these niggas like, "Hey yo, weren't y'all supposed to meet up with me this morning?" And he's looking at this other guy that we know is a cop. He's like, "Hey, so is that supposed to be Mr. Lee?" He's like, "No, that ain't Mr. Lee." He's like, "Yeah, I ain't think so." Bow, shoots him. I'm like, "Oh shit." So then Cheeto actually finds out Joe is a cop. We're like, oh man, these niggas about to be done deal. But of course, you always gotta have that goon that gets too close to the gun or whatever like that. JoJo does some quick thing and snatch the gun out, and then it's all mayhem, niggas shooting. Whole bunch of mayhem takes place. Joe out here lacing niggas. Cheeto trying to get away. Everybody got laced, and now it's Joe and Cheeto. They both ran out of bullets, and now they fist fighting. Joe got tired. Cheeto ends up picking up a dumbbell, but right before he drops it on him, he ends up getting shot. By who? Rack. So he basically saved Joe's life. So while this is going on, the daggone shop gets raided. We think to ourselves, it's Cheeto's niggas that's raiding the goddamn shop. Everybody in the shop got fucked up. Then the police come through there, whatever like that. The Lolo twins are still alive, though. While they tracking them down, a bomb goes off, you know what I'm saying, blowing up the whole damn shop. One of the cops, Duwan, ends up getting killed in the process. That was one of their 5-man squad. Joe finds out about this shit. He's pissed off at Rack. Rack's like, look, man, they gotta have bombs. They got weapons. They got set up bombs just in case of emergency. It's like, nigga, you really thought they weren't just gonna have guns or some shit lying around and they fixing up Leica and all types of dope? Like, what the fuck? Joe understands, but he's still pissed off. I forgot to mention one thing. Before they got the shipment together, Mr. Pack had met up with Hack one time, and then we all thought Mr. Lee came there to see him, but it was this dude by the name of Director Brian. So Brian's talking to Rack at this point, and then Rack is like, you know what I'm saying, he's starting to ask too many questions or whatever like that. So Brian tells Mr. Parker that the deal done, you gotta get rid of Rack, you know what I'm saying? But Mr. Parker's trying to fight for Rack, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know what I'm saying, he got too many connections with like the salt factory and all this other stuff. But he realizes he ain't got no choice because what Brian says goes, I guess. So now that we cover that and we know Brian is about to get this briefcase, Joe and a couple of his teammates, whatever like that, posing as Cheeto, goes to meet Brian and Mr. Park face to face. Brian, Joe, and his associate are led to one room, but Brian tells Mr. Pack to take Rack to another room. So we found out Mr. Parker is basically just going to end this nigga Rack, right? Joe and Brian sit down, and this is where Brian tells him he's actually Mr. Lee. So Joe is face to face with Mr. Lee himself, but hold on. But Mr. Lee for a second doesn't think Joe is Cheeto, so bottom line is he gets his goons out, you know what I'm saying? You think to yourself, oh shit about to go down. But then this waitress is coming out with this package or whatever like that, and we're like, what the fuck is this? And she says it's a package from Mr. Lee. We're like, what the fuck? So Brian apparently is not Mr. Lee because he didn't even know this shit was about to happen. So we're like, wait a minute. They open the lid of the package. It's a severed hand and Mr. Lee in a phone call saying it's from Mr. Lee. We're like, what the fuck? But before Joe could even answer the phone, a couple dudes coming out of nowhere dropping flash grenades and start banging off on niggas. He's like, what the fuck? The female cop going one-on-one with this other chick, whipping her candy ass, throwing her through glass and all type of shit. Joe's fighting one-on-one with Brian, you know what I'm saying, the back and forth cooking. Some more niggas start shooting, Brian gets away, or so we think. Joe gets knocked out in the chaos, all of a sudden it turns black. Next thing we see, Brian's tied up in his chair, right? Turns out the same room that Mr. Pack was in, but Pack is laying there dead as shit with a missing arm. So now we know where the arm came from. Wait a minute. The two masked people come out of nowhere with the guns, you know what I'm saying? They pull off their masks. Turns out the fucking Lolo twins. And Rack is just standing over top of him in his business suit. And this is when we find out Rack is actually Mr. Lee the whole fucking time. What in all these fuck? He gives this random speech that then starts burning his back to no end, just burning the fuck out of him. All type of scars in his back, scar for life. Joe gains his consciousness. You'll say a whole bunch of police that came in or whatever like that. Now they try to figure out where the fuck Brian is and where the fuck Rack is. Rack all of a sudden makes a phone call to Joe saying that, yeah, I got Mr. Lee. I told you could trust me. You know what I'm saying? Go up the stairs to the top of or the front lobby. He gets out there, all he sees is a body of Brian, you know what I'm saying, burnt up, racked up, whatever like that, but he's still alive, whatever like that. But the bottom line is, we know Brian's not Mr. Lee. We know Rack is Mr. Lee, but they don't know that, but Joe has his suspicions. So basically, the police take him in, they seize about $30 million of dope, and the case is closed, right? Joe tells everybody to go take a shower and get this out of his head. But what Joe's really going to do, he's going to go back to that veterinarian and see what the dog is. He goes there, finds out the dog is gone. Then we see the Lolo twins and Mr. Lee in a car with the dog, whatever like that. They're driving to who knows where at this point. Then we get this flashback to when Rack was in the car and Joe was talking to the dog. He kept calling him Jindu. Then he called him Laika, and all of a sudden the dog sat his head up. Now think, at this point in time, the dog couldn't use his voice, nothing. His skin, scars was burned, everything like that. He wasn't even moving like that. As soon as he said Laika, he shifted his head up. So at the beginning of the movie, we have this scene, right, where he's in like this cold, snowy mountain area, right? Now, towards the end, we're getting right back to this cold, snowy mountain area. Now we're trying to figure out where exactly is he going. He ends up driving to this cabin, right? Then he calls out Laika, and then all of a sudden the dog runs at him, you know what I'm saying? Pets him and everything like that. And I'm thinking about something, how the fuck did he know where the goddamn dog was? And you see the Lolo twins chilling at one cabin, waving and shit. And the other cabin, Mr. Lee comes out. Now they go one-on-one, face-to-face, and we find out Joe had already put a tracking device on the dog before anything else took place. So Mr. Lee's like, man, the case is closed. What are you going to do from here? Then they just sit down and both have a cup of coffee. Shit's crazy, yo. They're just looking out the window. Both of them put their guns on the table. And this scene is so fucking eerie, yo. It's like, yo, they're just like looking at each other, thinking about life. And then the screen fades out. All it shows is a cabin. Next thing you know, a shot rings out. You're like, who the fuck got shot? And it shows the Lolo twins in the other cabin still playing around with Laika because they can't hear shit because they're deaf. So they're just still playing around. And we're like, and then that's how the first movie is. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta see part 2 now. This shit is crazy as fuck. Who got shot? Was it Joe or Mr. Lee? We don't know. What's gonna happen when the Lolo twins finally walk over to the other cabin? You know what I'm saying? Is Laika gonna smell this shit? It's a dog. He got a good sense of smell. What the fuck? Believer on Netflix. Check that shit out. And I'm about to watch part 2.